All right, I have with me today Cade from Collaborate Worship. Glad to have you back. You've been on the channel before, but I'm glad to have you back. Did you have a good fourth?
Yeah, man, it was awesome. Love celebrating this great nation that we get to live in.
That's right. Well, Cade is the founder, creator of Church Sound Made Simple also, which is the course. And I want to have you on today to ask you the question, is church sound really that simple? I mean, you have a course on it, so like, is it really that simple going into it?
So it can be that simple, but most people make it complicated, right? And so my whole goal in life and through Collaborate Worship is to make it simple for people, because you can really just employ some simple things to create great sound. Even if you never get into the more advanced, complicated topics, people will show up and say, wow, it sounds great in here.
So that's good to hear that it is really that simple. But if for people like me, I'm thinking of worship leaders who maybe are guitar folk and they're like, get a new job. And they're like, oh yeah, by the way, you're over production as well. You know, I've been blessed at the past few ministries that I've been a part of where I didn't have to do that. I was like, in the church I'm at now, they were like, you're over that. And I was like, I can be over that, but I can't be in two places at once. So, I quickly had to make some adjustments. But if someone's in my boat where they have to train someone, they need to know what's going on. And so with your approach to music, like, how is it different from others?
Others they just kind of take a deep dive and look at the mixer and start going into all the details. And I mean, it's already overwhelming enough just to look at it. I mean, you're talking about from a new person's perspective, right? You look at the mixer like, oh crap, like what am I going to do with that? And then most people who go and teach, if you go to YouTube, there's like an hour-long video on stuff that, and they're using terms that you don't even understand, right? You're like, what are we even talking about? And so my approach is just to simplify that and not go into those terms that you don't understand. And actually, whenever I was creating Church Sound Made Simple, the course, I took my nephew through the course because he's never done anything sound. And I'm like, all right, watch this video. Now, what did not make sense to you? And he's like, well, I don't even know what you're talking about when you say low frequency. I was like, wow. And so, I mean, it's just, I drilled it down to that. It's like, here's what a low frequency sounds like, and then I play it. So, I mean, that's what the course is like, so that you don't have to feel dumb. I don't want anybody feeling dumb whenever they take my course. Like, well, I didn't even understand what he was talking about. It's just like, let's strip this down. Let's make it simple. So Church Sound Made Simple has an 8-step process for newbies. I'm talking about like you've never been behind the mixer before. In just 8 simple steps, you can show up that 9th after those. I like to spread that out a week at a time. You do 1 step each week. So let's say on that 9th week, you show up to church. You're like, I got this. I can do this.
Man, that's encouraging, and it's so accessible. So that's what I like about it. So you just talked about it. Maybe this is very closely related to it, but like, what are the biggest challenges that you see people face in their ministry when it comes to like getting a good mix?
I'd say it's some of the things that are taught on YouTube and things that aren't exactly correct. And what my mind automatically goes to is how to set gain. And I get this question a lot, but everybody's like, isn't the goal to keep our faders at unity and then use the gain knob to make sure that we can achieve that? And that is not how you set gain. It's not the purpose of gain. And so whenever you do it that way, you're sacrificing sound quality, because gain on your mixer is the first step on your mixer. So it's like the signal comes in, it hits gain first. And so if you get the gain wrong, it kind of throws off everything else on your mixer, from EQ to compression to all that stuff. So you get the foundation right and you're already off to a great start. So the purpose of gain is to get all your signals operating at the same level before they travel through the rest of your mixer. Because like Jimmy's sending you his guitar and it may be like a super loud signal, and then you have the piano and it's not quite as loud, and then you have your vocals. And so you're using the gain knob to get all those operating at like around -18 to -12 dB before they travel through the rest of your mixer. And that just kind of standardizes the signal levels. And so that everything else, you're giving your mixer a strong signal from every source, and you're standardizing it, and it just makes the whole mixing process a whole lot easier. So it's like just that one thing makes a huge difference.
And that doesn't matter where the faders are. This is you're just talking about the sounds coming into the board, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter where your faders are. You see, I think people get caught up on the visual of your mixer, right? But we're not mixing with our eyes.
Right.
We're mixing with our ears. And the purpose of those faders are so you can have different things at different levels. The purpose of gain is not to get things at different levels. It's to get everything on the same level, and then you use your faders to create your mix.
Yeah. So I don't know if this translates or not, and if it's totally stupid, I'll cut this out of the video. But I remember early days when I was first driving, I had a cassette player in my 1988 Caprice Classic. And so to get my phone, or well, probably not my phone, whatever it was, my MP3 player to play in my car, I would put that cassette adapter in there, and then I could, it would play through the radio. And I just remember if my phone or whatever device it was, volume was too low, it didn't matter how much I cranked the stereo in my car, it wasn't like as full. So I would like put this all the way up to like, not 100, but like, 75% or something. Because if I did 100, it started clipping. And so it was like 75% was perfect, and then I could adjust it. And I feel like that's the same word picture. If someone is brand new to sound mixing, it was like at that level at my device, I was getting the most pure volume I could have. And then I would just adjust how loud I wanted it in the car. Is that like a similar word picture?
I love it, man. That's a great example, especially for all the millennials and older who are listening, right? Everybody younger than us is going to be like, what did he just say?
What did he Tapes? What? Tape? Yeah, well, for me, it makes sense. That's hilarious. Okay, so this is just kind of a personal question. Do you ever get asked to like come in and guest mix at an event or somewhere where you're not familiar with their sound and have to like work through issues and problem solve? I don't know if that's something you deal with.
I don't get that opportunity very often just because of how full my schedule is with the things that I have going, but I do get to occasionally. I used to run sound for an event that was once a quarter, and it was like at one of the big conference centers in town. So that comes with a whole host of problems because there's no sound treatment or anything in those rooms. But I love the challenge of getting into a new room and creating a mix.
Do y'all's coaching, does it come with, or do you do coaching? Does that come along with the course? And like, do you have a session where you look at someone's setup and be like, okay, you need to not spend so much time over here? Do you try to problem solve in those as well?
Yeah, for sure. Because the course is just like a broad stroke of like, here's all the essentials you need to create great sound. And then everybody's going to have their own specific situation at their church because they're using different speakers, different amps, different mixer, maybe different setup. And so, yeah, we get into the weeds and help them sort through those problems as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's so many variables. I do the same thing. I have a course on the Pod Go, as we were just talking about before we pushed record, and like, you can set up the same preset, but like if I have a preset on one guitar and I plug in the other guitar, it can sound completely different. So you have to have the knowledge to know what to do to adjust. So I can see how like when there's so many variables, that's very important. Okay, another question. Do you have a story or a memorable experience where you just blew it? We want to hear that Cade was human at one point in history. Do you have any of those horror stories or anything like that?
Probably more than you could count, right? I make mistakes just like everybody else. But the one that comes to mind today is I talk a lot on Collaborate Worship about EQing your room. I don't want to get into that right now, but you can go find my video on YouTube if you want to learn how to do that. But I talk a lot about it because it just makes it creates a foundation for a great mix in your room. And so I'm doing that all the time. Anytime I go into a new room, I'm EQing the room first. And one time I EQ'd the room and then I got done and I was listening to something back. I was like, man, that just sounds terrible. Like what did I do wrong? And then I went through and I leveled out the EQ and I did it again. And I was like, okay, I've done this probably hundreds of times now. And I don't know why am I not getting it this time? And so I finally figured out that, so when you're EQing your room, you have a mic set up in your room that's listening to the room, and then you're watching the real-time analyzer on your mixer to see what EQ frequencies are popping out above the rest. Well, it turns out I left the EQ activated on that mic channel. And so the EQ, it was being heard through EQ, and I was EQing based on this other EQ that was already applied. And I mean, you're never going to get a good result whenever you do that. So I was like, wow, what a rookie mistake.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's good. That's a good tip for those of you who are EQing a room and you can't get it right. You make sure you turn that other EQ off. That's great. So we've talked about Church Sound Made Simple, and that's the course. Do you have other resources, and where can people find you?
Yeah, collaborateworship.com. We also have a course for the X32 called X32 Mastery, so you can learn all the ins and outs of that popular mixer. We have one coming out this fall for the Wing called Wing Mastery, and then we're going to dive into the QU32 after that. We have this long-term goal, or really a short-term goal, of creating a mastery course for all the popular mixers that are out there. So I think the Yamaha LS9 is in the lineup. Obviously, we can't get all those out this year, but hopefully by the end of next year, we have all those covered. But all that can be found at collaborateworship.com.
Well, man, I'm glad you were able to come on here and share some wisdom with us. I love watching your videos. So if you're not subscribed to him on YouTube, definitely do that, because there's a lot of good value on there. And if you want to dig deeper, I'll put the links down in the description. You can go check out the courses and all that. Kay, thanks for coming on here, man.
Jimmy, it was an honor. Thank you.
All right, well, we're out of here. See ya.